Yes,
You've
we
got Ken
can.
looking lovely.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. I don't think we do anything around it. We're straight into it, aren't we?
Yes, that's correct. We are just reconvening from yesterday, so we're straight into it.
Okay, Alistair Brickle is first up on behalf of Bill Muir. Page 134 on the hard copy, page 136 on the electronic copy. You there, Alistair?
I am, Murray. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Well, camera's on. You can't see me? Well, it's probably a blessing.
Where you go? There you are. You're looking lovely.
Oh, as usual, yeah. Okay, Murray, there's two, my own submission plus Bill Muir's. Is that right? So you want me to do Bill's
That's
first?
right.
Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, what I've got here is just a couple of pages.
You're doing Bill Muir's first.
Is that what you prefer?
Well, that's what's on my list. So do Bill's first. We'll cut that off in questions and then you do yours.
Okay, fine. I'll just read, there's a couple of pages Bill's given me here. I'll just read them if that's all right.
Well, I think you can take it all as read.
Well, this is extra. I think this is extra material he's put together in the last few days, which you may or may not have.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Bill's comments. A 10% rate rise. How did TC get to this point financially? This was not signaled in the last LTP, and the propaganda put out from TCDC does not justify such an increase. In the absence of a plausible explanation, these following comments are believable. Over the past decade, successive councils have found ways to be creative with their finance reporting to show rates are at an acceptable level. This has entailed using internal funds, e.g. the TCDC Depreciation Fund. A front page spread appeared in the New Zealand Herald on August 3rd, 2019. Waste rort may cost 1 million. And from the business section the same day, waste firm's dirty secret. A waste contractor is accused of ripping off TCDC, which is now also under investigation for its handling of the matter. When this went to the Office of the Auditor General, anomalies were found, e.g. the depreciation fund was depleted. This put the Audit Office in a difficult position as they should have corrected this error during the last audit. Because of this, the Auditor General's Office has instructed TCDC to put their house in order. They have sorted this by raising the rates. Simple solution. This, and what has taken place with Smart Environmental, is the bulk of the proposed 10% increase. We need to try and establish the value of TCDC's productions, e.g. the summer magazine. If only 200 people out of 30,000 are interested in the TCDC putting up rates by 10%, then probably similar numbers would read the summer magazine. That's his page one. His page two is, we all have a chance to change the way we do things post-COVID-19. I would like to see honesty, integrity, openness, and transparency as the cornerstone of TCDC policy. No more of, one, the 2005-2006 Coupe Voyages proposal to sell council land on Taylor's mistake to a community board member. No more of the multi-sports complex and toilets. No more of the granting of a 50-acre lease of council land to a sitting councillor for $6,000 per annum instead of accepting $60,000 per annum from a promoter. No more of the ongoing secretive nonsense of the waste management contract. Over a year to negotiate this contract. No more of the failed composting plant. No more of the council-initiated Mercury Bay Medical Centre with $250,000 of public money. A promised business case by April 2017, still waiting. That is the end of Bill's two-page submission. Okay,
are you taking questions on behalf of Bill?
I'd
like to leave it at that?
I think I'll leave it at that. That's probably the best thing because he's not here.
Okay, thank you. Now, would you like to move on to your submission, please?
Okay. So
page 182 on the hard copy, page 194 on the electronic copy. Thank you, go, Alistair.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for the opportunity to submit and join in this process. I think it's very important for council to have established transparency and credibility, especially in these times. Now, initially, there was a suggestion that there would be no council organized public meetings to deal with this LTP or annual plan process. And I think that seriously eroded council's credibility in the eyes of the public. I think it's something council needs to really take on board, this credibility. The fact that there were perhaps relatively small numbers, as reported in the press, partaking in this process suggests not that people aren't interested, it suggests that people have no faith in the system. People make submissions and they'll probably feel they're just not listened to. So I think the Whitianga public meeting the council had was well attended and it was a useful meeting. So I think the process needs to be carried on with public meetings organised by council. Okay, the bulk of my submission you've got in front of you. Obviously, you are well aware we're in difficult times, and you're obviously well aware you're going to have to look at every item of expenditure, probably line by line, and we're expecting you to do that. I'm sure you're going to do it. I think the basic principles as to decide what you should do and not do is you should defer any unnecessary projects consistent with maintaining public health and safety. That's got to be upmost, of course. Prioritize projects, I feel, if you can, to those that have a high labor content, because a lot of people are hurting economically, and the more jobs you can provide doing these projects, the better. Reduced expenditure based on tourism. Now, we're a tourist operator and our business has been decimated. We've had bookings cancelled out to April 2021 already. Other people are feeling the same pain. So tourism is going to disappear pretty much, certainly overseas tourism. So things like the Hahe Beach car park, 190,000, that can go, it can wait in a year or two or whatever. Now I've listed a lot of projects we should defer. There's a list of about 25 on my submission, so you can obviously read those at your leisure. There was a part of my submission missing on the council website. I think that's been corrected with a late submission, which you should have had made in front of you. But what it was about was the rubbish costs. Now, rubbish disposal costs are obviously a major issue for council at present, and these costs need to be passed on to the ratepayers. Increased costs on a blue bag basis or transfer rate are possibly necessary, but such increases will undoubtedly result in an increase in fly dumping, especially in these difficult economic times. Now, during lockdown, I've been in a lot of walks around the place, over Blackjack Hill here at Katoona, up to the picnic table on the Katoona Hill, and looking over the bank. Everywhere you go, you can see a lot more fly dumping, a lot of rubbish. A lot of it is very fresh. And I think this is only going to get worse if council puts up the blue bag charges and the tipping fees. So I think maybe now is a good time for council to reassess the whole process, how you handle waste. We need to, maybe we should consider this. I'm sure you've considered it in the past, Murray, you may remember this, of totally getting rid of the blue bag charges, totally getting rid of the charges at the dump, and just have a uniform fee for every ratepayers on their rates to handle rubbish. You don't have a charge for blue bags, and you don't have a charge of the tip. Now, it's not an ideal solution, and I'm sure you've gone through this before, but maybe now is a good time to have a relook at this whole issue. Now, maybe now is the time for council to be a little bit innovative and look at the big picture and think long term how we as a council, as a region, as a country are going to handle rubbish. Now, I've spoken before to council about incineration plants, high temperature incineration plants. I visited some overseas. They're very effective. They do not produce pollution. Now is the time to have a look at it again. They're not cheap, so it's going to have to be a countrywide solution. And I think this is probably something useful that council could do with the Local Government New Zealand membership, of which you are a member, rather than wasting time talking about useless things like the climate change declaration, which is going to do nothing. If you got together with those people as a joint bunch of councils and looked at how we can handle incineration nationwide, I think that would be very useful. And probably now is the time to do it. We should be looking at new solutions. These incineration plants can handle everything. There's no need for sorting of rubbish. Everything goes in the same bag. It's all chucked into the incinerator and it burns really well. You get out at the end, you get out energy, considerable amount, useful amounts of electricity. You get ferrous and non-ferrous metals, tons of it a day, which you can sell at a profit. And the big thing is you totally cut back on your landfill. The landfill costs, the area of landfill that's required, the carting to the landfill is all cut back. It's just a win-win thing. Now, the plants are not cheap. You're looking at $500 million or thereabouts, but nationwide, that is probably the way to go. And locally, you could probably do it at Mary. Possibly you could have a system whereby the waste is trucked to the nearest port, put on ships, taken around the country to wherever the processing plant is, maybe at a railhead, taken to somewhere where you can burn it and produce the power And also you can take forestry slash as well, and building waste, building timber, it all burns. You could chip up tires, get rid of the tire disposal problems. And you avoid these suspicious fires you have every so often at rubbish dumps around the Coromandel. We've seen it several times at Coromandel, and around the countryside, these fires seem to spring up when there seems to be an excess of recyclables piling up. It's very interesting. Okay, now that's enough on that one. Obviously, this is a difficult time for ratepayers. A lot of businesses are struggling, and I think this might be a time for council to consider a 20% pay cut for all council staff, starting at the top and working down. Now, the central government's done this. A lot of companies are doing this. It's not going to have a huge effect on council rate increases, but it shows solidarity with all the rest of us, and it sets an example for other businesses who might follow suit. So I think it would be a useful time to consider that, probably the best time in a long time. It just needs to be for a year or two until we get over this hump with the disease, and then we can look at it again. We need to cut excessive expenditure in council, look at every department, and of course the department I always focus on is the communications department, as Murray well knows. I've been hammering on this for a while. Okay, it's a big department. It's been growing over the years. I think it's now the time to have a look at it. And of course, my favorite target, excessive waste there, I think, is the Summer Magazine. It's a very lovely publication. It's produced every year. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's produced every year. It's very well produced, no doubt about it. But it's actually competing with private industry and the print media in particular. And now is the time we need to be supporting private industry and the print media. Central government has given subsidies to the TV and radio companies. They've subsidized that. They have not, I don't think, given a cent to print media, and print media is very important. Things like the Hauraki Herald and the Informer locally here, I think, are really valued by residents, particularly older residents. I'm sure a lot of them go out to their mailbox every Wednesday or whenever it comes out, and that's their reading for the week. And council obviously advertises in these publications, and I think it's a useful vehicle for council to get its ideas out and about, and also council's website is useful as well. But the Summer Guide competes, whether people like to believe that or not. It does compete very actively for advertising. Now, things like the Informer and Hauraki Herald, they depend a heck of a lot, or mostly, on their advertising revenue to survive, and they are struggling at the moment, and they're going to continue to struggle in this environment. It is not fair at all for council to be stealing advertisers from these other publications at a time of need. It's like a council stab in the back.
Wrap up really shortly, Alistair?
Yep, okay, I'm almost finished, Murray. Yep, okay. I think it's almost like a stab in the back for these businesses. So I think we need to really have a look at that publication, whether it's necessary. It goes to absentee ratepayers. Well, they don't need the publication because they are already coming here anyway. So I think they are on board with Coromandel being a great place to stay. So I don't see what purpose it serves. Okay, end of story.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Any questions to the councillors? Any questions to Alistair?
Yes, Alistair, just want to clarify something on the public meetings. You're talking about the current hearings?
Correct, yes, I am.
But we can't have the current hearings in the time-honoured tradition.
No, I fully accept that, Sandra. No, I'm saying that initially with this annual plan process, there was a suggestion that it would be our local ratepayers groups or so on who would organise the meetings. I think that was the initial suggestion. But fortunately, council decided to have their own meetings. We had them in Whitianga and Coromandel and other places, and I think that's great.
Right. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
I wasn't quite sure what you were saying.
No,
you are aware that we are in a contract for solid waste collection. You are aware of that?
I'm fully aware of that, and I understand it's being reviewed. But I'm thinking longer term here, Sandra, about long term what we can do.
Oh, we're well across that one, Alistair.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So look, thank you very much for that. Murray, do you want me to take over now? Okay. Thank you. Any further questions of Alistair?
Yeah, I've got one, Alistair, Terry Walker. I was interested around the blue bag issue that you raised with the rubbish.
Yeah.
And some options around that. Have you considered the fact of the recycling bin that we currently use, using that week about for different, first week for recovery recyclable stuff in the second week for rubbish, so we don't need the blue bag. Is that an option that you've thought about?
No, I haven't thought about it, and it's certainly one to look at. It might be a little bit confusing for ratepayers. I don't know how, but that's just education, isn't it? No, I think you should have to look at everything. But I think by incinerating, you don't have to sort anything. Nothing needs to be sorted. Everything goes into the burner. It's wonderful. So you save all that separating costs, and you save all the piled up recyclables which we can't sell overseas and probably can't recycle in New Zealand.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Alistair? Thank you very much, Alistair. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Steve Garland, page 213 of the hard copy, page 225 of the online copy. Steve, are you with us?
Yep, you've got 2 for the price of 1 though this morning.
Excellent, thank you. Love that. Welcome. You have the screen.
Okay. Yeah. So you've got our submission. Obviously, I don't want to be speaking to that again. You can read that for yourself. But we're just kind of really concerned that despite the claims of our incremental rates over recent times, the percentage actually for us in a rural area, our rates have increased 32% over 4 years, which is an 8% per year increase. Based on our land values.
You're right.
Yeah.
So we get hit on top of that, at 8% first, so a 32% increase, and now we get hit with another 10% increase.
Got it.
So I think that's and as well, I just feel as rural people, we benefit least from a lot of benefit. We don't get water, we don't, we get reduced road services. We have roads. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let Steve speak to that.
Yeah. So council are proposing this 9.8% increase per year, and it certainly is a lot more than the 3.7 increase that was forecast in the last LTP. So we're finding that's a huge jump. But we would like to know where and how council proposes to reduce overall expenditure for the next LTP. Obviously, that's in process at this point, but we would like to have some information on that. And for us here, we live north of Coromandel. We have lots of slips and erosion, and they continue to happen. We've had slips on the side of the road, and they haven't been attended to for up to 2 years. All we've got is orange cones on the side of the road, and so it's one lane, and it's been like that for that long. So we're wondering why that is the case. So we'd like to see something happen there.
Okay. I'm offline.
Oh, somebody else is talking.
Excuse me. Could somebody and people that are online please mute your microphones? If you're doing anything in the background, please mute your microphones. Thank you. Sorry, Steve. Carry on.
Okay.
And can I just ask with a question? Where's this particular slip that you're currently referring to?
Oh, it's in between Papa Aroha and Amodio Bay.
Oh, you mean the one way just on the corner?
Yeah.
Very dangerous.
Okay,
carry on.
We've had some close calls there, and there's one in Waititi Bay where there's some erosion that's come down above the road, and it's been like that for over a year. So we're kind of feeling that these sorts of things that affect our day-to-day living and travelling, it keeps on getting pushed to the back of the list, the to-do list. So we kind of feel that, like with the increases of rates that we've had here personally, that it's only fair that our rates decrease accordingly if and when land values fall. So for us, obviously, it's a big thing. So I don't know if Rosemary wanted to say anything more about that.
Yeah, it's just that if our rates go up when the alleged land values go up, do they go down when the alleged land values go down? And it's just alleged anyway. It just seems to be kind of a forced inflation. which doesn't benefit us at all. So, you know, our wages don't go up like that. So it puts people that are rural, and I'm sure you're really aware of that, Sandra, in positions of whether they can stay in places or not. And that seems unfortunate. Yeah. We as ratepayers, we're also having to cope with increases in the Waikato Regional Council rates. And I always understood that, you know, we're often told, oh, user pays. But we as ratepayers find we're paying for a lot of things that we don't use. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. We better move along because we've only got a few minutes, haven't we? So now, obviously, and I was listening to what Barry Brickle was saying. Was it Barry? No, Alistair Brickle, sorry. You got that wrong. Councillors, and I thought that was very interesting what he said about the blue bags. We see a lot of roadside dumping, and I think that with the increase in costs of the blue bags and dumping fees at the transfer stations is going to create more roadside dumping. I thought that was a really good point that he brought out about looking to the future and what we can do so we're not relying on, say, like China, who've now decided that they don't want certain plastics. So I think that if we can mitigate that by looking to the future, that would be really, really good. So what else do I want to talk about? Oh, yeah. Specified or tagged areas for rates, are they being siphoned off? So like you might have a targeted area for rate spending in a particular area, and then that's put to the back burner, but maybe those funds are being used in other areas or siphoned into other areas, say kind of like rob Peter to pay Paul. And Coromandel Colville is probably the poorest of the three wards on the peninsula. So we're finding that, yeah, we're kind of missing out quite a lot. Yeah, as we've already said, we've talked about repairs to slips and erosion. Yeah, we're kind of really concerned about council not keeping to budget. For example, the recent proposed district plan, when we were going through that whole process for a few years, I'm sure that there were some big cost overruns with that. And I don't know what they were, but yeah, what can we do to stop that happening? So that's a question I have. So council has informed us that there have been significant and unexpected overruns, and I think that as ratepayers we don't have the luxury to spend the 6 million over budget. So we're wanting to know where the fiscal responsibility is in this kind of thing. And the last question we've got is about the Tourism Infrastructure Fund, which is obviously something that is a government initiative. It doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that that was in place, but it doesn't surprise me. So what sort of protection do we have for that, or notification that the government is expecting more money from the local bodies? So that's probably us at this point. Yep.
Yeah, just one thing that I don't think's come up now is just we feel that we are a tourist destination, and tourists use our roads and use our rubbish facilities and all that sort of thing, and there are two things that we see extreme here. And I'm wondering, is there any way we can have a levy on the tourists who come here and use the facilities without the burden being totally on the ratepayers?
So is that the conclusion of your presentation?
Do you have anything else to add? No, we try to keep it brief.
I'll throw it open to questions. And so do the councillors have any questions?
Yeah, so I'll jump in with a question. It's Robin here. Hi. I just wanted to know, because obviously you heard Alistair's submission, and he was talking about communication. And as people who live in a rural area, how would you like to comment on the communication between yourselves and the council, or between the council and yourselves?
Well, we intermittently get the Hauraki Herald. We don't get the Informer. So we miss out on a lot. If we're wanting to find out what's going on, obviously we could go to the council website, but generally we find out after the event. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. It may do. I'm not sure. I can't speak.
No,
for
yes,
Rob.
sorry, it does. Sorry, it does. Thank you.
Can I just ask, Steve, are you aware of the amount of work that roadworks, remedial works following the storm events that have been done on the Port Jackson Road?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
But we don't.
No.
We don't drive that way. So often.
There are substantial works that have been done that still need to be done, including the two you point out, and there are significant budget monies in the budget for those remedial works, and they are following the storm event as a result of those storm events.
Right. Yeah.
Just thought I'd share that with you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
Well, yeah, well, just my one was, we noticed when there was that slip round Oamaru Bay between up to Golden Bay and between that and Kapitauki, that had slipped for a long time before it slipped again and shut the road completely for weeks. So it was one lane for a long time, for probably about 18 months before they did the final repairs, and they only did it because the whole road slipped away. And I'm wondering if that particular slip on between Amodio Bay and Papaaraha may end up being the same, where it becomes a huge cost if it's left, because it slips again and shuts the whole road. So that was, just something.
Yep, okay, point noted. So, got that on board. Right, just to ask any further questions from the councillors. There being none, I'd just like to thank you both very much for being with us today online. It's been great.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. We do.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right, now we have Alistair Sim, page 459 of the hard copy or page 471 of the online copy. Welcome, Alistair.
Hello, Sandra. Thank you for having me. Am I online? Can you hear me?
You are. We can see you and we can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
My submissions, interestingly, my oral submission is somewhat different. And if I could read, please. After reading the annual plan submissions and rereading my own, I did go through a large number of them. I'm left with a number of impressions, and the strongest of which is it's going to be very difficult for some time into the future, and the council is going to be damned if they do and damned if they don't. And consistent with my submission, there appears in the other submissions that I have read to be almost universal assertion that at the very least the council ought to suspend the proposed 10% rate increase and preferably significantly lower the entire rates bill for the community. Most of these submissions are accompanied by a statement to the effect that expenditure must be cut to essential services only. But the question of what constitutes essential spending for the council is far less clearly defined. The phrase nice to have has appeared in popular usage recently as an adjunct to essential services, and it's used throughout the submissions. I use the term myself, but with no definition of what is and what is not essential or core services for the council. The documents provided for our comment include a long list of proposed CapEx projects planned for 2020-21. They're distinguished by ward and the district-wide items, and we're asked to comment, and some submitters claim some expertise in deciding what was and what wasn't appropriate expenditure to remove from the budget. It's my belief that this approach is a stalking horse. It's a device to divert attention from internal problems that face the council, problems that most certainly predate COVID-19. No person really can have a reasonable opinion of what is not or what is valid expenditure over the entire district. I don't know anything about the quality of the footpaths in Thames or the state of a hall roof in Whitianga or the necessity for a footpath in the dunes in Whangamata, which is a matter that seems particularly unpopular. We're effectively sidelined from serious commentary and restricted to small individual issues. And this, I believe, exposes the flaw of the constant expensive consultation process, which I believe is the single biggest cause of the antipathy that the average ratepayer has and expresses towards the council. It's not a personal criticism. It is that I believe that we are systemically unable to effectively administer ourselves at a local level. And I presume this is the case throughout New Zealand and probably all Western social democracies. Put simply, I believe middle management have to a greater or lesser extent taken control of the council from the people who ought to make the decisions. That's the mayor, that's you, Sandra, and the elected council. The bureaucrats have elected a wall of obfuscation and confusion to prevent meaningful examination of their actions. And the chimera of public consultations is a large and expensive brick in the wall, which does, of course, as my wife pointed out to me when I was reading these to her last night, raise the question of what am I even doing here if I don't believe that this is a very valid process. But given that it is the process, I feel that I ought to partake, but I do have serious reservations about its cost and its validity. It may be constructive to consider my position. I'm extremely interested in politics to the point that I have a bachelor's degree in politics and economics. I have a master's degree in politics from Auckland University. I've got a law degree. I've had 30 years of dealing with the council as a property developer and the Auckland City Council for 10 years before that. I write letters to the local paper. I read reports. I listened to the entire special council meeting last Tuesday and I thought it was most interesting. I've been on the Ratepayers Committees and I've recently resigned as chairperson of the Ratepayers, Hāhei Ratepayers Association. Hold on, sorry, damn thing, go away. I've recently retired, where was I? I recently resigned from the chairpersonship of the Hāhei Ratepayers Association so that I might make this submission because it is contrary to the principles that the local Ratepayers Association would like to espouse. I believe I can modestly claim to be what's called in the literature as engaged in my community. I'm as qualified as any member of the public to have an opinion about the proposed expenditure under this annual plan. And this very important and well thought out view of mine is I haven't got a bloody clue. I hardly know what would be appropriate expenditure in the best of times, and this is the worst of times. And perhaps it's best to revert to Bill Clinton's campaign slogan, it's the economy, stupid. All the decisions that you're going to have to be made are going to have to be made around the budgetary constraints that are going to come crashing down around your ears, not just because of pre-existing conditions, but because of what's going to happen with the whole New Zealand economy and the world economy, in fact, due to COVID-19. And to give you some illustration of the confusion, the Minister of Economic Development, Phil Twyford, has called on councils not to decrease rates or even lower projected rate increases. Yeah, Mr. Twyford's got a spotty record at best. Grant Robertson, the Minister of Finance, says that now is not the time for rate increases. I see Mr. Salt, representing ratepayers in Whitianga, making an impassioned plea and asking Minister Twyford if he was living on another planet at this moment in time. And with all due respect to Mr. Salt and the Taxpayers Union for that matter, I think they missed the point. This is going to hurt. No matter what, it's going to hurt a lot. And it's important that the council and the government continue to spend to support both local and national economies. In my written submissions for the rate increase, I've changed my mind, which is why I resigned from the chairmanship of the Ratepayers Association. I believe the 10% increase ought to stay, and if you really had the courage of your convictions, it ought be increased. All right? While I claim no ability to comment on specific expenditure, that doesn't mean I'm without opinions as to what actions might be beneficial, at least in the intermediate term. I have over the number of years followed closely a number of council projects with a degree of interest, and I'd have to say that I'm disappointed in their outcomes. The multi-sport park in Whitianga, I believe, was poorly planned and executed and was an unnecessary extravagance. But at least at the end of the day, we have a sports park. It's not used much, but it will be suitable for 100 years. How on earth did we get a Whitianga town upgrade to the part of town that is in fact declining in utility? The upgrade appears to be planned for Whitianga 20 years ago, not 20 years in the future. The Great Walks project was on the face of it a good idea that was hijacked by sectional interests right here in my own community. The net result is a bloody great sealed car park that Hāhei needs, if at all, for about 6 weeks of the year, and an upgrade of Lees Road that appears to have cost in excess of $3 million, but is so mired in confusion and secrecy that we, the ratepayers, will never know what or why it cost as much as it did. And we have yet to build the track. And the favourite of mine, of course, as Alistair Brickell referred to, the composting plant in Whitianga. I have the Appendix 13 of the ordinary meeting of the TCDC dated 26 September 2007, authored by one Viv Iberg, CapEx manager, and approved by one John Whittle, service delivery group manager. It looks wonderful. It's procedurally correct in every manner, but it's just simply a fairy story. Composting human waste was then and remains entirely problematic. It never had a place in a community such as ours. The report, interestingly, proposed buying 3 of the plants, not 1, but 3. Mercifully, they have finally closed the plant to stem the losses. As an aside, I believe a public inquiry ought to be held to ascertain quite how I believe it'll be about 10 million got wasted on that particular project. It's my very firm opinion that when you hear someone saying that they are leading edge, future-proofing, breaking new ground, or other such expressions that this project was littered with, you've got to, and when these people are spending other people's money, you should run for the hills and hide because you're about to have your wallet plucked. Finally, the solid waste collection about which we can know nothing. I do know that the contract was negotiated by council staff without any knowledge of what the waste flow comprised in the TCDC area. It is little wonder that it turned out problematic. Solid waste collection, I believe, must be returned to a council operation. It will be difficult as there is now no longer institutional knowledge within the organisation, but I believe a start must be made. Outside the contracts that you are currently already obligated to, I note, Sandra, when you made your comments. I raise the above examples not to go back over old ground, but to illustrate what appears to me to be poor decision making. You're going to have to raise rates. You're going to have to spend on infrastructure to support the local economy. But please, when we look back, can we say that the expenditure was proper, proportionate and useful? For instance, Hahe needs an integrated sewage system. It's as simple as that. A hole in the ground for a toilet is appropriate for a community of a dozen or so people, not the size we are now. It's simply just uncivilised to shit in a hole in the ground. And it does not need 5 years of consultation and vacillation. At the moment, Hahe doesn't need anything else. I know nothing of other communities' needs because I don't live there. I'm nearly finished. To achieve the meaningful expenditure required, it is the council and the mayor and the elected members, not the bureaucrats and much worse, the private consultants who must be in charge of the decision making. Good luck because you're going to need it, I believe.
Thank you, Alistair. Very much appreciated. Can you send us the additional submission you've made, please?
Oh, certainly.
So, yeah. What you're reading from, if you could, that'd be great. I'll just now ask the councillors if they'd like to ask any questions of you. Councillors, do you have any questions of Alistair? No, there doesn't appear to be any, Alistair. So I appreciate that. Can I just ask though, before you go, were you serious about a public inquiry, which for a project that was about a decade or so ago, when that can cost quite considerable amounts of money, which we don't really want to spend?
There's a question to which I have to answer. No, I wasn't serious. But I do believe at some stage of the proceedings, when another one of these things come along, what happens is that we get new councillors, new bureaucrats, and it just gets pushed aside, and we never learn from the process. When you read that original report and you look at it, you think, my God, what a fairy story! How did this get out of the traps? And if we knew the answer to that question, we might not repeat the problem.
I appreciate that. Point well made.
Thank you.
Point well made. Thank you very much, Alistair.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. There is a question. Gary. Gary, you had a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was very interested in your comment about people spending other people's money should run for the hills. That's really one of the concerns I think you raise, how often sometimes they come to the council and we agree to spend money. And in fact, as you say, if they want to try and sell something to the council, they should come with a product rather than getting the council to spend the money to make it happen. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. If one thing with 40 years in business has taught me is that when someone else gets access to your checkbook without any constraint and without any skin in the game, it ends in tears. And to some extent, you are of course always in this situation because you're spending ratepayers' money, but it means that I think you have to be extra cautious.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? There being none, thank you so much, Alistair. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandra.
I understand Steve Hart is not with us, so we'll move on to John Evans, page 52 of the hard copy and online. So John. John, are you with us? John Evans. Do you want to unmute?
Right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, John.
But can you see?
Yes, we can see you as well. We can see you as well. Yep.
So we're all good. Good morning, Sandra. You haven't been to lunch with us recently, but that is probably because you're somewhat busy. I wished I'd had the background of the previous speaker because I feel rather inadequate now. However, I only really want to talk about this 10% increase, and I just look at that, and then I look at the borrowings that at preceding years the council has had to take up, and I understand that we are now some $120 million of borrowings. Would that be correct? Just ask that question. Correct? Would that be?
Sorry. So the questions will only come from the councillors. You present your submission, then there'll be questions from the councillors.
Okay. Well, my submission is really on the 10% increase. This country is in very serious trouble, and it will become a lot worse. The council's budgets we can't change the past. The past is done. The borrowings have been made, and the unfortunate economic mismanagement, which I call it, from the council as far as some of the projects that were undertaken that were not necessary, and we've had to borrow to support, have created a situation now where you have your ongoing budgets, which are going to take X amount of dollars, and you're looking for a 10% increase in rates to both cover or try and cover partially the previous borrowings and the future borrowings for those projects. 10% rate increases will never cover what it is you're planning to do. You will be borrowing even more money. Now that's fine. All councils have to borrow money. However, the ratepayers and the small businesses are yet to really feel the influence of this COVID-19 virus. And further down the track, there are going to be businesses that fall over. There are going to be people that can't afford to pay their mortgages and all that sort of thing, which will combine and make it extra difficult to even pay the existing rates that you are demanding. I believe the council has to look at their forward plan. They have to trim it completely down to the necessities for the next year to 2 years. The 10% increase in rates should be wiped altogether. It would be no point in the council coming back saying, well, we've listened to all the submissions and we've made the decision that we agree with it, and we're going to reduce the rate to 7.8%. Because if you do that, it will be seen through as just for what it is, and it will not be accepted, in my opinion. I think that the rate that the council can live quite comfortably without the 10% rate increase. It may have to borrow some more money. Interest rates are very low at the moment, but that's just the way councils have to operate. It will save money by not undertaking works that aren't necessary. And just to use an example, and I mean, I live in Whitianga, and the main street upgrade all looks very nice, but wasn't necessary. We really needed that money to be spent on saving Buffalo Beach, because we have not extended the rock wall far enough. But anyway, to get into specifics of what the council should be spending their money on, this is not the forum for that, because there are so many things. I've heard 3 conversations, and there are so many things that have been put on the table that really I don't know how you're going to feed your way through them. But you've got the list of the main projects that you want to undertake in the next 12 months. And I think that they have to be the ones that you look at, and those substantial ones, and they have to be trimmed to meet your budget. You have to cut your cloth to suit the suit. You can't otherwise. You end up in a worsening situation, as you already have with your borrowings and with things that are being done that aren't necessary to be done. People won't like that. People will say, well, what's the council done this year? No, nothing. You know, they were going to build that, or they, you know, but that's fine. You can qualify that by showing your responsibility, and it is the council's responsibility to keep within the budgetary measures that are in place. If I look at Whitianga, I look at the growth that's gone on in Whitianga around the canal area. There's been a huge increase in housing there, which means there's an increase in rates. I mean, I don't know the percentage of total council rate collection. How much is spent in Whitianga? How much is spent in Thames? Should Whitianga not be part of Thames? Should Whitianga line up with Hauraki, for example? Maybe that's a better fit, Sandra. But you will not, obviously that's not one you want to consider, but I mean, it's, I don't know. You're talking about rubbish bins. I mean, one yellow top rubbish bin once every week or 2 weeks, it's just not bloody well big enough. Especially now as people, you know, have to combine bottles with cans and general rubbish in the one bin. You're saying every 2 weeks we do rubbish, waste rubbish, and another week we do the bottles and cans. One bin is not going to work. I know that in Australia, in Queensland, they have two bins provided for this. One for bins, bottles and cans, and one for general household rubbish, and that works very well there. There's no bags, there's no seagulls that rip open their bins. But I don't want to go down the track of individual items on a list that's already a mile long. I really don't have any more to say to that, Sandra, just to say that the council, I think, has to be very responsible with this. It has to think of the people and not itself. I think the 10% has to be shelved for this year, and other councils in New Zealand are either zero rate increases or up to about 3%. So we're way out of line with that, and we've got to think of the people more so than we've got to think of the borrowings, and that's all I have to say on the matter.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. I'll just ask the councillors if they have any questions. Are there any questions from anyone? There being none, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning, John. It's been
So does that mean
good.
it'll be a zero increase? There's no questions. That'll be good, won't it?
I couldn't possibly comment. But no, thank you very much for taking the time. Really
Okay,
appreciate
mate.
you being online.
Well,
Thank
later.
you, John.
See you, mate. Bye.
Thanks. Right, Warren Mayer on page 211 or page 223 of the online copy. Warren, are you with us? Warren is with us. He's just going to unmute and join the meeting. Have I got a chat thing somewhere? So, Warren, are you joining? Think Warren has pulled out. Okay, so we'll move on to Bill. Bill, are you? So Bill Barclay is on page 100. Bill, are you able to join the meeting?
There we are. Hopefully that's done, Sandra.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Bill.
So there we are. Yeah, look, I don't have a space here to do a dance act, unfortunately, but we'll just get right on with the submission. Unlike the others.
Bill.
Hello there.
Could you just hold on for a moment? John, could you mute your microphone and video, please?
Very sorry, Sandra.
Thank you. Right, Bill, it's all yours now.
Yes, look, I imagine you're all pretty well submitted out by now. I must say I was most impressed with the submission of Alistair Sims up until the point in which he said that he supported the 10% increase, if not more. I couldn't quite equate that with his earlier comments about the cuts that needed to be made. I'm afraid I don't agree with that. I believe that the council should and must make cuts, and I think you'll find that the bones of what I am saying are in the submission that you have in front of you. I don't intend to read it. I don't think that's necessary. I think I think that it was pointed out at the beginning of the session by Mr. McLean that he didn't want the first submitter to read a submission. But I think that what I'm saying is there quite clear. I know that the council asked for particular comments on the UAGC, and nobody else I notice has made any comment on that. I think sometimes people underrate the effect of the UAGC on the rates and the fact that it does help to keep the rates of the people in the lower income section of the population rather lower. Now, it's not a perfect measure by any means, and certainly there are numbers of people who are on the basic pension living in houses maybe of a higher value, and therefore they do get caught. But in general, I believe that it is a very useful tool, and that moving to 18% is a very good move on the part of council at this particular time. So I certainly support that. I think that the operating expenditure needs to be looked into very carefully. Particularly because of the increased operating expenditure over that which was listed in the LTP. The figure related to market rate increase surely can be adjusted downward in view of the inability to complete major works, and that appears most likely in this current year. In both the capital and operating categories, further the reduction in provision of depreciation. This really causes considerable concern to me in view of the cavalier manner in which depreciation reserves have been depleted over the past 3 terms of council, leading to increased borrowing. One area of operating expenditure is in the salary area. I'm not going to comment any more on that. Clearly, council will be giving that close consideration, and I just rely on them to make an appropriate decision that would reflect their recognition of the sacrifices that are being made in other areas of the community. As far as capital expenditure is concerned, and I'm only in a position to comment on what's going on here in Thames in that regard, I'm very pleased to see that the Rhodes Park grandstand and club rooms have been removed from the plan. That's appropriate. My comments on the World War I monument are inappropriate. I didn't really realise what that money was for. It's not for more plinths and statues. It is actually for an upgrade there, for essential repairs. The capital expenditure, therefore, in Thames reduces to 38%, while other wards are standard nil once that change is made. The swimming pool heater will come through in the Thames rate increase in due course. There must be surely other projects that are now redundant in the light of the likely drop-off in tourism. I think that's something that has to be very closely looked at. I know that there is some belief that local tourism won't drop off. Well, I certainly don't believe that to be the case, and the overseas tourism is obviously going to be a no-no over the next 12 months. The council needs to get realistic over this tourism problem and realise that so many businesses in this district are likely to go to the wall as a result. and the council simply can't afford to keep them all afloat. And by whatever means, I mean, you may have great ambitions to do so, but it certainly wouldn't be sustainable. So in summary, I've no doubt that the council could achieve a zero rate increase if it set out to achieve the savings that I've mentioned here, and there are plenty of others. Forget growth, maintenance only of existing facilities and infrastructure. That's what the council should be thinking about at the moment. With some intelligent tweaking, climate change objectives may also be achieved. Thank you, Sandra. That's all I have to say.
I appreciate that, Bill. Can I just ask, what do you think about the position of the amount of grants budgets that each of the community boards has?
Well, obviously, along with everything else, the council's going to have to look very closely at that, just what it can afford. But there are clearly charities and groups out there who are dependent on those grants, and so you have to understand the effect of removing council grants in that direction. I think we have to look very, very closely at them along with everything else.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any questions from other councillors?
Murray here. Just a question, Bill. You made a comment, forget growth. Do you think council's got any social responsibility to get projects going to provide local employment?
Well, this is the great dilemma, really. What can that put the councils the ham and the sandwich over this? I believe that it's the job of central government to oversee the creation of projects that are going to bring about that employment that you're talking about. I think that having the council go out on this alone without central government would be extremely damaging to the finances of the council. I don't believe that it's in a position to borrow to undertake any great new projects at all.
So I take it your answer is no?
So, are there any other questions of councillors? So, can I just ask one, Bill? So, for adaptation purposes, I mean, we know we're desperate for housing around the Thames area. Do you not see the need for being able to provide the infrastructure for that and for adaptation purposes?
I don't think this is the year to do it, Sandra. I think you've got to look just at the budget. Forget about any capital works, even if you believe that it is a requirement. It's not a requirement for this particular year. 2021, you should be pulling it right in.
Okay, it's good. Thank you very much indeed. There being no further questions, I'd just like to thank you for being part of today's viewing platform. So thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much.
Okay. I now invite John Freer, page 350 of the hard copy or page 362 of the online copy. John, welcome to the meeting.
Good morning, Sandra. I'm just trying to unmute my camera, but it's not allowing me to do it. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, we can hear you fine. So
all right.
The volume is yours, or the sound is yours.
Okay, well, I won't bother with the camera. Sandra, councillors, TCDC staff, thank you very much for the opportunity this morning, obviously, to present to you all. With me, I've also got our Onimana Orca Chair, Carol Basham, who's listening in, and one of our committee members, Bruce Scott. When we reviewed Council's 2020 annual plan, it was pretty obvious to us that what we'd found that our region has been caught in the middle of the perfect storm. Council has recently experienced a $6 million plus budget overrun. We're now facing increased costs for services and compliance. The proposed annual plan delivery is going to require a 9.98% rates increase. We understand that our rates to debt ratios at about 125%, with 150% being the maximum under the local government funding agency policy. And on top of all that, we're obviously going to be faced with significant COVID impacts that everybody's going to have to contend with. And to make matters worse, if my camera is on, you'd see that I haven't been able to have a haircut for about 6 weeks. So you're lucky you haven't got the cameras on. Preparing our submission, concern for us was an understatement, unfortunately. And to exit this perfect storm, we know that a pragmatic approach or response is required. And this is what we are urging Council to undertake. A pragmatic response is based on facts and knowledge, targeting agreed outcomes with an effective and achievable plan. Unfortunately, what you are asking residents to provide input on does not fit this approach. What are the things that shape this view? You provided a consultation document which was pretty much void of the necessary financial data to enable us, or anybody for that matter, to clearly understand where the 9.98% rate increase would go. We believe that your attempt to reduce capital expenditure projects or operational expenditure as indicated in the revised forecast simply does not go far enough, particularly with what we're facing with COVID or no COVID. And of course, with COVID, we're going to have the cost of the recovery of that. We all realise and acknowledge that these are very unusual, changing and challenging times that are consuming us. This alone is enough to change the strategy from one of what we want to one of what we need. Subsequently, as detailed in our submission, Orca is recommending the following. We note and do appreciate the consideration and reasoning behind a potential significant rate adjustment. We know that that is needed. However, the timing of this requires reviewing with a recommendation of a 12-month delay until more is known about the COVID-19 impacts. We believe the only move that's warranted at this stage is maybe a local government CPI rate adjustment for the coming 12 months. You know, there's no point trying to go from one year to the next year with CPI increasing where the rates aren't going up. Following on from this is the need to remove the risk of future rate increases over anything above a CPI. You know, and unfortunately, you're not the only council in this position. We've been in Wellington for many years. They've got dire issues down there with infrastructure and stuff that has to be funded. But we've got to get back to more of a business approach rather than a political approach. And we believe that council needs to assess a policy which applies a formula for future rate reviews, ensuring at least an annual CPI adjustment or whatever the measurement is for local government, that be applied. We realise that rates just cannot continue to carry on as a political football. Instead, we've got to take a business approach to that. You have to ascertain if there's any CapEx programs that can be supported by any government infrastructure, and I did hear this matter discussed in the special council meeting just recently. Stimulus package which become available due to COVID-19. We realise this is a long shot. Everybody's already climbed onto that bandwagon. But if the opportunity's there, you know, we need to make sure that we can grab it. And you have no option but to postpone or shelve any capital expenditure projects which fall outside of the immediate need. These are dire times, and I think, you know, we just cannot carry on with that plan. We're asked to list the stuff that we wanted. We don't consider that we're in a position to undertake that. That chance was available at the original review of the 2020 annual plan, and it's now up to the councillors and staff to know what should be undertaken and what can be put on hold or even binned. We also urge, somebody just asked previously about the responsibility with council around coming out of COVID. We believe we would like our region to be proactive, and we urge council to consider the likes of a major tourism initiative to be developed on the back of COVID-19 recovery, providing employment and a long-term benefit to the whole region. And you'll see in our submission that we made, such projects could potentially achieve government or private partnership support. It will provide both short and long-term regional benefits. And we've chucked a couple out there, one being the likes of revisiting the Great Walk Initiative. That was the exercise, I think, was before my time, which was done or considered with the helicopter line or one of those. And the other one is the likes of a sky rail from Thames to Whangamata. If any of you have been to Cairns, you'll see, would taken a ride on the sky rail, which comes down from Tanundra out to Cairns. We just make two further observations, and we don't believe that they're appropriate for this forum at this point, but we would like Council to ensure that district funding allocations for CapEx programs into the future are aligned to each district's rates revenue. We understand that may have been the situation in the past, but it is something that's worth revisiting. And also the identification of projects of regional significance, where they be funded per ward funded projects. That's where all of council puts in a specific project which the council may wish to undertake, which has a benefit to the whole region. Just to wrap up, our members have expressed significant concern over council's financial position, and red flags have been raised over council's financial capability and the capability to handle the tasks ahead. Council currently has to bite the bullet. Somebody just mentioned that previously. Currently, there cannot be funding for the likes of Thames Business Association, cameras in Onimana, or a multitude of wharf upgrades across our region. What is important to us are the core responsibilities: roads, waste, water, rubbish, and we'd also like to throw in fibre, which has become very apparent of the need for good fibre coverage during this pandemic lockdown and the like. We wish to add two further aspects, being cohesive communities and business viability. These are important, these being top of mind coming out of the successful COVID storm. We believe our region and council has to go on the front foot to ensure that our communities stay cohesive and that our business has the ability to be successful into the future. I'll just wrap up. I watched a Kiwi doctor on TV the other night who had led the SARS epidemic response and recovery in Hong Kong, a guy, Dr. Tom Buckley. He took a proactive, strong and pragmatic approach to the disaster and challenge he walked into, and he beat that storm. His comment about New Zealand exiting COVID-19, he confidently said, "We will come right and we'll be okay." And we personally believe that we are going to be okay. We will, but only if you people adopt the same approach. Thank you very much.
Well done, John. That was excellent. Thank you very much for a very, very good and comprehensive submission from the Onimana Residents and Community Association. So well done, and thank you very much. Can I just ask the councillors if they have any questions? There being no questions. So no, it doesn't seem like there's any questions. Your points have been very well made and I take them on board. Was that somebody else coming through?
I just comment on your comment too, Sandra, to John. Thank you for a very good presentation. I was taking some notes and we'll take heed of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I can ask a question. It's Robin here.
Robin.
Wait, since we're asking everybody else, do you guys like the Coromandel magazine? John?
Yes, I love it. I think it's fantastic. Okay, and that's coming from a former journalist, so there you go.
Awesome, cheers.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we're moving right along. Has Steve Hart joined the meeting at all? If not, then we will adjourn and reconvene at 11 o'clock. So unless anybody wants to raise any matters from the councillors, then we'll adjourn and meet again at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.